Breaking news this morning. French maritime authorities say a baby has drowned after a migrant boat crossing the channel ran into trouble.
Well, more than 60 people are understood to have been rescued during this operation as well. Joining us now is the Work and Pensions Minister Alison McGovern. Alison McGovern, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Obviously, tragic breaking news that we've got here. Yet another death in the channel, this one a baby. How long will it be before there is control of this situation and before we won't see deaths like this happening?
Well, thank you, Charlotte. I'm literally just finding out this news as everyone else is this morning, and it's devastating to hear what has happened, and it's just heartbreaking to think of a baby dying in that way. It's devastating. Obviously, like everybody, we want to see progress on stopping this dreadful trade in people. The trafficking that's going on is horrendous. And we've moved quickly to appoint a new commander and to do, as we said that we would, to move forward to work with nearby countries to improve this situation. But just hearing the news this morning is absolutely horrific, and I'm sure everybody is feeling that sense of desperation to lose a tiny child in such a way.
So we know, there's been talk of the measures that you're wanting to put in place to be able to try to, to tackle this, dealing with the smuggling gangs, clearing the asylum backlog, accelerating the removal of people, just, some of the measures that you want to do. But the issue is how long all this will take, and meanwhile these crossings are continuing and people are continuing to lose their lives.
Yes, that's right, and it makes it all the more important that we get on with that work to undermine this dreadful trade, as I've said. And I know that people will be anxious to make progress on this, given the consequences for human life. It's absolutely devastating. And I'm sure my colleague, the Home Secretary, will be saying more about that, in Parliament and elsewhere. I understand people's absolute desire, which I share, to stop this happening, because for those people who are put at such risk in this way, it is absolutely devastating. So we are getting on with that work, as we said we would before the election.
Alison McGovern, we know that a lot of the people that come on these boats are coming from war-torn countries, Syrians, Afghanistanis, Iraqis. Now, there's a war breaking out in the whole Middle East region at the moment. We could see more people coming on these boats in months and years to come from Palestine, from Gaza, from Lebanon. How much of that is a concern for you? First of all,
it's a massive concern on a personal level. The situation for civilians caught up in war has been a long-standing concern for me, and I am absolutely devastated at the situation that civilians in the Middle East find themselves in. I think it's absolutely horrific, and have spent a long time talking to Syrians and others about the consequences of the war that they experienced, and now this. It's utterly horrendous. That makes it all the more important that we work with our nearby neighbours in Europe to work together to respond to this. We can get humanitarian aid to people. We can offer people support where we're able to. I am realistic about that and the limits to what we can do, but we must strain every sinew and work with other countries in Europe to try to help where we can. And most of all, to work collectively for a ceasefire, because that is what will stop this dreadful war. But as I say, I'm realistic about that, given the horrific situation we're in.
All right. Just very quickly, the news overnight, significant news. Israel and President Biden seeing it as a victory that Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, has been killed in an attack. How significant is this? And is Keir Starmer and is the government now going to use this as an opportunity to really call for a peaceful political solution?
Well, we're talking about the person who was the, architect of the dreadful events just over a year ago that have caused such horrific damage to so many people. And we're thinking today of those people who have lost their life, families who've suffered such dreadful situation through this conflict. We need the hostages to be brought home to their families. We need a ceasefire to create peace in the region, and government ministers will be working towards that in concert with our allies who want to see peace in the region.
Minister, there's a lot of talk in the newspapers this morning about, fears over the budget to come, the government's policies, what's going to be next for people. One of the things I know that, falls within your remit is wanting to get people back to work. And we have this idea from the Health Secretary to roll out weight loss jabs to get people back to work, which has obviously been a controversial suggestion, hasn't it? What evidence is there for the fact that people are off work because of their weight, and also the difference that losing the weight will make?
So I'll come to our broader plan in just a moment, which is much bigger than just this point. But just to answer that point, obviously, obesity is an underlying issue for lots of conditions. And as the Health Secretary set out, what we're proposing is to try to use this new technology and build up that research so that we know what impact it can have. That has to be led by a clinician. So people's health has to be at the forefront of this. But in a broader sense, we do know that we have 2.8 million people who are out of work now who are unwell. And that is not OK. That's partly a consequence of the situation our NHS is in, which has to improve. And it's also a consequence of the state of the country's health before the pandemic, and then the pandemic made it worse. So there are lots of things that we need to do to help support people. GPs often get very frustrated that sometimes people go to them with health concerns, whereas actually what that person needs is money advice, or they need help changing their job so that they can do a job that will help them be more well. And we've got a whole plan to change this. Okay. And the bit that I'm really passionate about is making sure our job centres change as well. So every time someone walks into a job centre, they get real help to get a good job.
I also want to ask you on these plans to cut benefits, because there are real fears from people who could be at the forefront of this. Hundreds of thousands will lose benefits, those with mobility issues, mental health problems. There is a feeling, isn't there? There's been this cut to winter fuel allowance that's hit the elderly, and now it could be people who are ill, the sick, who are then facing their money being cut as well. Are you confident this is the right way forward to how to treat people?
Well, I know what wasn't the right way forward, and that was the plans that the Tories set out, because they were full of holes and would do no good. We will bring forward our own proposals on this, and that's what I'm talking about today, which is our plan to radically improve the help people get into work. Like all departments right across government, we have to look at our budget. We don't have any choice because the country is not in a good financial situation. But the important thing about getting people into work is that it's good for them and their family finances, and it's good for our economy. It will help us grow sustainably. And we'll be setting out the detail of our plans in the autumn in a white paper.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us. Alison McGovern, the Work and Pensions Minister.